Hello aspirants, I welcome you all to daily newspaper analysis of Shankar IAS Academy. Today's date is 16th of December 2024. Displayed here are the list of articles that we are going to discuss today. We have taken articles from yesterday's newspaper as well. So in this first article, we'll be discussing about what is biosimilar, advantages of it, then the disadvantages of it. In the second article, we'll be discussing about NPAs, that is the non-performing assets. And in the third article, we'll be seeing about the physiographical features of Morocco country. And in the fourth article, we'll be discussing about CAG from the prelims perspective. So without any delay, let us get into the news article discussion. Now look at this article about Comptroller and Auditor General. Now currently he has flagged suspicious PDS deliveries in the state of Karnataka, and that is why CAG is in news. From prelims perspective, knowing about CAG is very important. So let's start with what is the constitutional provision under which this particular office has been established. So it was established under Article 148 to Article 151. Now, for those who don't know, Comptroller and Auditor General is an office that was established during 1858 itself, during the British administration, and from then we have this particular office. But we have a certain difference between Indian Comptroller and Auditor General and the British Comptroller and Auditor General. For example, the British Comptroller and Auditor General, he just takes care of both controlling and auditing. So controlling is nothing but taking care of or regulating the spending of the parliament. But when it comes to India, we just audit the spending, but we are not controlling it. Remember this first important difference. Secondly, in British, they are actually the member of a parliament. They are a member of House of Commons, but in India, he is not actually a member in the parliament. Just remember these two very important difference. Now in India, after independence, this body was actually made into an independent authority responsible for auditing both the union and state accounts, and they actually function independently of the executive, and they are unbiased when it comes to auditing of the public finance. So we can tell that CAG is actually the guardian of public purse. Remember this. Now talking about the appointment and tenure, he is actually appointed by the President of India, and his office duration or the tenure is like 6 years or up to the age of 65, whichever is earlier. Talking about the removal process, it is actually similar to Supreme Court judge. We have already covered the impeachment of Supreme Court judge. You can just visit our video and you can view it. Now moving on, let us quickly go through the functions of CAG. Firstly, as I said earlier, he functions auditing. This includes all the union and state government accounts, including the PSUs and government funded entities. And this is very important because it brings in checks and balance, brings in transparency, and it even enhances the accountability of the executives. Now the second important function is reporting. They provide or submit the report to the president and governors of respective states, and they will be presenting it to the parliament and the state legislature. And the third important role that is played by CAG is the advisory role. They provide advice and suggest reforms for better financial management. So these are all very important facts that you have to remember when it comes to functioning of CAG. Now let us quickly go through CAG's role in public finance management. Firstly, he monitors receipts and expenditure, and he just checks whether it has adhered with the budgetary allocation or not. And the second important function is that he analyzes whether the financial discipline is there or not, and he notifies the parliament if there is any shortcoming when it comes to the financial policies. Now the third important thing is debt management. He evaluates the borrowing sustainability and informs government about its debt. And finally, they even audit government schemes like PM Kisan, like Ayushman Bharat for effective fund utilization. So these schemes, they provide a DBT or the direct benefit transfer, where the money is actually transferred to people's bank directly instead of the traditional method where they claim through challans. So these are the very important role that is played by CAG, and very often we will be seeing CAG in news because he just exposes the corruption that is happening in the accounts. So make note of all these points. Now we have a prelims question for you. Which committee examines the audit reports submitted by the CAG? The correct answer is Public Accounts Committee. Okay, so with these learned points, now let us move on to the next news article. Now look at this article about non-performing asset or the NPAs. The news says that top 100 defaulters account for 43% of total NPAs. Now the important sectors or the top 5 defaulters include energy or power sector, then the manufacturing sector, then the real estate or construction sector, and the telecom sector. So these are the important takeaway points from this particular article. But knowing about NPA from the prelims perspective is very important. So let's start with what is this NPA. NPA is nothing but non-performing asset. So even if a loan is given by a bank, amount given is not bought back by the bank, we call it as a asset and not a liability. They will just mark it as loss asset and they will be never marking it as a liability. So when do we call a loan or an advance as a non-performing asset? It is when the principal or the interest remains unpaid in 90 days. So for 90 days, if the bank is not receiving the interest amount or the principal amount, then they will be calling that particular loan as a non-performing asset. And there are certain classifications as per RBI guideline. Firstly, substandard, when the NPA is not paid for more than 12 months or equal to 12 months, they will be marking it as substandard. And loan that is already in substandard, and if it is not paid even after 12 months, then they will be called as doubtful, and they will be marking it as loss when the loan amount or the principal amount is uncollected or there is only little recovery potential. So this is the very important classification when it comes to NPA from the RBI guidelines. Now talking about the NPA provisioning, see, provisioning is like just taking some amount for the sake of the future losses. So this provisioning amount will help the banks when it comes to a default of a particular asset. And this provisioning rate, it actually varies based on sector, borrowing capacity of the particular borrower, and etc. And as per the Basel III norms, we have to 100% provision any kind of NPA within a bank. And that is an important term that you have to remember, that is the gross NPA or the versus the net NPA. We call it as a gross NPA when the total value of all the NPA before provisioning. So if the provisioning is not being included and only the total amount of loan that is given out by a bank is calculated, then we call it as gross. Moving on, let us quickly go through the reasons behind NPA. See, the first important thing is this economic slowdown. Remember, there are two cycles when it comes to economics, either a virtuous cycle, that is a very good cycle, or the vicious cycle, which is like a downfall followed by a downfall followed by a downfall. So there is only two cycle when it comes to economics, and when there is an economic slowdown, it will impact everything including the loans given out. So if the businesses, they get reduced earning, or if there is any project delays due to which the cost has been increased, or the profit of the businesses has been reduced, so those kinds of time the NPA is very evident in the economy. Other reasons include willful defaulters. The borrowers will not actually pay the amount willfully, and there are certain reasons like a natural disaster, like a disruption that disrupts the business operations, and there are certain things banks also do. For example, poor loan check, there will be inadequate credit risk assessment, and the banks will be relying too much on the collateral that was been provided by a particular borrower instead of assessing the actual performance of that business. And there are certain things when it comes to government, like the policy changes, and there is global problems like the trade war, commodity price drops, and involving any kind of dishonest practices. So these are all very important reasons behind this NPA. Now let us quickly go through the impacts of NPA. See, once a loan is marked as NPA, it has different impact on the borrower. For example, the person's CIBIL score will be affected, meaning he or she cannot be obtaining any kind of loan further. And even legal actions will be taken under the SURFACE Act. So if you know about this particular act, you can leave that in the comment section. Apart from this, they have a lot of impact on the bank. For example, the bank's income will be reduced and the lending capacity of the bank will be disturbed. And on the economy, there will be lesser loans if there is a lot of NPA, and there will be lesser investment or growth, and there will be higher loan cost. And on the businesses, it will be difficult to obtain the loan, as I said earlier, and the loss of investor confidence will be there, which will again affect the economy in the larger picture. Now, on the government side, the burden to just recover this amount will be putting on the taxpayers. So they will be the most burdened people. And when it comes to the investors, their stock prices will be reducing, which means they will be getting very low return than what they have actually invested. And finally, on the customers, there will be high cost loans, and there will be stricter lending criteria. So it is like, if there is an NPA, there is a vicious cycle, and to get out of this, we have to be very cautious about NPA, reducing NPA, and we should be very strict when it comes to NPA regulation. So these are the important facts that you have to remember. Now I have a prelims question for you. This is a previous year question from 2017. Which of the following statement best describes the term scheme for sustainable structuring of stressed asset, S4A, recently seen in the news? So this is the very common template of UPSC that will be asked every year. So here the correct answer for the question is, it is a scheme of RBI for reworking the financial structure of big corporate entities facing genuine difficulties. So with these learned points, now let us move on to the next news article discussion. Now look at this article about biosimilars. Currently, a particular company from India named the Aurobindo Pharma has actually got the approval of EMA, or the European Medicine Agency, to use a particular biosimilar drug. And there is no wonder India is called the world's pharmacy. And knowing about biosimilars from the prelims perspective is very important. So let's understand what is this biosimilar. See, every particular term you can identify the etymology of the term so that you will remember what it is even after revising for a longer time. So here you can break this particular word into two, like bio and then similar. So bio, it means that a particular living organism is involved, right? And similar, when we talk about similar, it is not identical, but it has the characteristics that are similar to a particular thing. So when a drug that involves the living organism in the production process and that are identical to a particular drug, then it is known as the biosimilar. It is as simple as that. But there is a very big difference between the biosimilar and generic medicine. Here you can see that generic medicine, they are like chemically synthesized, and both, remember this, both this biosimilar and generics, they can be produced only after the expiry of the patent. So a particular company, they will be filing for a patent for whatever they have found, but once the expiry of the patent, like duration of 20 years, after the expiry of this patent, any particular country, they can produce both the biosimilar and generic medicine. So when it comes to biosimilar, they will be using organic process, like involving living organism. But when it comes to generic medicine, it is chemically synthesized. And talking about the complexity, just because the living organism is involved, it is like a large and complex structure, and generic medicine are very simple. And when we talk about the similarity, as I said, they are highly similar but not identical. And the generic medicine, they are the exact copy of the original drug. And when we talk about the cost, they are actually cheaper than the biologics but costlier than the generics. So here, for those who don't know, biologics is nothing but a drug that is generated through genetical modification of a particular organism. And when we talk about generic medicines, they are very affordable. India is known for generic medicines within our country, as well as when it comes to exports. Now, having seen that, now let us quickly go through the applications of biosimilars. See, first important thing is they can even treat chronic diseases like cancer, anti-immune disorder like RA, then diabetes, and then growth hormone deficiencies, and etc. And the second important thing is they can reduce infection risk in chemotherapy, And thirdly, they are like a cost effective alternative. It improves the accessibility and affordability for anyone to just access the particular drug. And finally, they support for personalized medicine, and it can actually aid advancement in any kind of targeted therapies. So if a particular person has a particular kind of disease, and he or she requires a particular dosage, and this can be like easily personalized. And these are all very important applications of biosimilars. Now, talking about the disadvantages, see, first thing is high development cost. So what happens is we require a significant investment when it comes to the clinical trials and manufacturing, as well as it is a bit costly when it compares to generic medicines. But and the second important thing is, as I said earlier, it has complex manufacturing, and it is actually sensitive to the production changes. So since it involves all the living organisms, they are like volatile, and they impact the production process itself. And the third important thing is interchangeability concerns. There are meaning the physicians, they have very limited access to the real world data, and they know very less about this particular biosimilars, so they won't be recommending it to the patients. That is a very big disadvantage. And there is regulatory challenges, the meaning there is a rigorous testing. This will increase the time for the drug to reach the market, and there is a lack of confidence compared to established biologics, so the patient also will be hesitant to accept the particular drug. So these are the advantages of the biosimilars. Now let us quickly go through how biosimilar is regulated in India. See, it is regulated by the Central Drugs Standard Control Organization, or the CDSCO, and it is regulated by the guidelines on similar biologics. And the key requirement for any kind of biosimilar to be sold in our country include, firstly, pre-clinical and clinical data. So they will be demonstrating the comparability through rigorous studies, and there will be comparable studies where they will be checking the safety, purity, and potency of that particular drug. And there is also post marketing surveillance. Even after being in the market, it will be under surveillance, especially to ensure the continued safety and efficacy. And the approval process in India actually aligns with the international standards like the EMA and WHO, as I said earlier. And when we talk about the current scenario of the biologics industry in our country, we have certain leading producers, for example, the Biocon, Dr. Reddy's, and the Aurobindo Pharma, and they play a very important role in improving the accessibility to affordable biologic therapies. Now, I have a prelims question for you. Which regulatory document provides the guidelines for biosimilars in India? What is the correct answer here? Option C, the guidelines on similar biologics 2012. So with these learned points, now let us move on to the next news article discussion. Now look at this article. As the title itself hints, this article talks about Morocco, and the country has actually welcomed Indian defense companies to set up their production unit in the particular country. So from the prelims perspective, learning about the physiological features of Morocco is very, very important, and from which a map based question can be asked. So let's start with where the particular country is located and what are all the borders of it. See, here in this map you can see that it is located in the northwest of Africa, and it borders Mediterranean Sea in the coastal side and the Atlantic Ocean, and in the land side it borders West Sahara and Algeria, and it is present in the very particularly strategic position where it has access to the Gibraltar Strait. So here you might get a doubt. The proximity to the European countries is so close. So why didn't Morocco or the Spain country came into an agreement to just build a bridge? So there are a lot of reasons behind that. Let us go through that one by one. So the first thing is the distance between the two countries is like literally 18 kilometers. So constructing a very long traditional bridge, that too in between the sea with high fluctuation in tidal water as well as too deep, is very risky. Now this is the first important reason, geographical reason. Now the second important reason is having a particular bilateral agreement between the two countries. So to achieve that, both the countries has to make a lot of agreements with respect to the construction cost, the maintenance cost, and taxing them, and etc. And the third important thing is like geopolitical thing. A lot of trade happens through this particular region. So it building a particular bridge in between has to get a lot of permission from around the globe. Now these are the important reasons why a particular bridge has not been built between Spain and Morocco. But there is an alternative, like we can build a undersea tunnel, like we already have undersea tunnel between United Kingdom and France. A tunnel in which trains are operated. Like there are three tunnels. One tunnel is for ventilation, and another two tunnels there are trains are operated, which actually reduced the commutation time and enhanced the economic engagement between the two countries. Now remember this fact. Now moving on to the physiographical features. So the first important thing that you have to remember is the Atlas mountain. It actually spreads through the Morocco, and the very important thing is that the highest peak, Mount Toubkal, which is like 4,167 meter, is in Morocco. Here you can see that in the image given here. So the Atlas Mount, or it just divides the country in the two. Now the second important mountain is this Rif mountain. Here you can see that Rif mountain. It is north along the Mediterranean Sea, and it has the rugged terrain and has the highest biodiversity. And the third important thing is it has Sahara Desert on the southern and southeastern part of Morocco, where the mineral resources and tourism are very famous. When we talk about the coastal plains, they are actually fertile and they have the proximity to the Atlantic Ocean. So the Atlantic coast is also there. The important rivers include Maulia, Cebu, and Dra, through which irrigation is done for the agriculture. Here you can see that all the Dra, Maulia, and Cebu. Now moving on, let us quickly go through the key economic activities that happen in Morocco. So the first thing is agriculture. It has the Mediterranean climate where the summer are very dry and the winter are wet and mild. So the major crops include citrus fruits, olives, grains, vegetables, dates, and they are known for exporting olives and argan oil. Remember this. And the second important economic activity is this mining. They have the world's largest phosphate production. Repeat pandra. They have the world's largest phosphate production, and the other important minerals through mining include lead, zinc, silver, and copper. Now they are also very famous for the tourism, like cultural heritage. Marrakech is known as the Red City, where the buildings in this particular city are made up of red sandstones, and the Fez is known for age-old universities, and Casablanca, it is known for a particular mosque. And the desert experience, they also attract a lot of tourists. And there are coastal cities and the Atlas mountain in which the hiking and camping actually happens. And now we have a preliminary question. This is also a previous year question asked in 2020. Here certain countries and their capitals are given, and you have to find which one is not correctly matched. So questions like this actually appear in our UPSC examination. That is why we have made an effort to explain this. So the correct answer for this particular question is option D, Cape Verde, for which Bamako is not the capital. Capital of Cape Verde is Praia. So with this, we came to the end of the news article discussion. If you like the video, hit like, do comment, and don't forget to subscribe to Shankar IAS Academy YouTube channel. Now thank you so much for listening.